Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Harihi Om. Om, peace, peace, peace. The subject today is Swami Vivekananda's role of religion in modern education. So the topic before us is the role of religion in modern education, and this will be discussed in the context of Swami Vivekananda's own ideas on religion and education. Now, we all know that Swami Vivekananda gave his message to the world during the roughly around 9 years of time between 1893 and 1902. In 1893, he gave a well-known lecture which all of you are familiar with. His great Chicago address, which actually in a way is a turning point in religious thoughts. Now, this may appear to be a bit of an exaggeration, but this is not just my view. If you look at Vivekananda's definition of education and his definition of religion, then you can appreciate this point. His idea of education is well known. Education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. These are his own words. Means there is an inherent inner perfection in all of us. And education only helps us to bring out this perfection. Knowledge doesn't come from outside. Knowledge comes from within. That's how he defined it. Now, this in a way is in total contradiction to the doctrine of tabula rasa, John Locke and others, who said that when a baby is born with an empty slate. His mind is an empty slate. It's a vacuum. You can make anything out of him, just as a pot maker can make anything out of a pile of clay or mud. He can make a pot, he can make a pan, he can make a cup of clay. Like that, you can make or unmake any human being when he is born. This is the popular view. This view is now, of course, it is questioned and debated, not always in favor of Locke's, not endorsing Locke's view, sometimes frequently criticizing his view. Even Kant himself, directly or indirectly, contradicts Locke. Of course, these are two different times. But I mean to say, Vivekananda says that knowledge is all within, which means we are not born with an empty slate. Our mind is not vacuum. We are born with certain samskaras, what we call tendencies, impressions, accumulated habits, ways of thinking, emotions, and so on. We are all born with that, something that we carry over from the previous life cycles. This is a view of most of the religious traditions of Eastern origin, primarily of Indian origin, like Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism. All these traditions endorse the view that our life is not just one cycle. We go through these endless cycles of transmigration, and in each cycle we inherit certain tendencies, and we enrich, and then we again migrate to the next life, and this cycle continues like a wheel. This is the view of Buddhism and Hinduism. More or less, I am not going deeper into this metaphysical aspect of this doctrine. So what it means is, Swamiji says a teacher, a book, or a university or a library is all important. But it doesn't give us knowledge, but it helps us to bring out this knowledge, perfection that is already within us. This is his definition of education. Education is a manifestation of perfection already in man. Now, when he defines religion, he uses a different word. Instead of perfection, he uses divinity. Religion is the manifestation of divinity already in man. That's what he says. It means there is a divine element within all of us. So when you meditate, when you pray, when you go to a church or a temple, when you practice any spiritual disciplines, we are actually removing the obstacles. And then the divinity already within us begins to manifest. Just like a sculptor. If he works on a granite block, and his purpose is to make the image of a Buddha, and right now he has got a huge granite block in front of him. And what he does is he chisels out all unnecessary parts. And then the result is the Buddha that is already there within granite begins to manifest. Like that, when we remove ignorance, the perfection, which is another word for divinity, begins to manifest. So you can see, according to Vivekananda, there is no scope for dividing, making a division between demarcation church and state. So it doesn't mean that the First Amendment has no relevance. It just, historically speaking, the First Amendment, you say, Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of a religion or prohibiting its free exercise. More or less, this is what the First Amendment says. Also in France, after French Revolution, there was a strong movement to separate the church and state, mostly because in many of the Catholic nations of Europe, the church had a stranglehold over everything that went in an education institution. Many of the older universities of Europe, Oxford, Sorbonne, they had some origin, some connection with the church. Church was the main instrument behind the establishment of many of the older universities of Europe. So also in India, which is one of the most ancient civilizations, but also one of the most modern democracies. So it became a modern democracy in the sense the United States became a modern democracy in the last decade of 18th century, or Britain gradually worked towards a democracy through struggle all the way from Magna Carta to modern times. Now, India became a democracy in 1947, and it also adopted a constitution for which it borrowed and it enriched its own constitution by taking clauses and ideas from French constitution, from British constitution, which is an unconventional constitution, also most famously from American constitution. So many of the great liberal ideas that you find in Indian constitution, which are very huge in total contrast to American constitution, which is very small in terms of the size of the book, but Indian constitution is very voluminous. But it took many of these ideas from French constitution, American constitution, and also from the written forms of the unconventional constitution of UK and other countries, modern democracies. So in India, for example, the state doesn't support one particular religion, doesn't favor one particular religion opposing another religion. It is secular, it's a modern secular democracy. So you can find there's a lot of argument for, or rather in favor of separation between church and state. You cannot really rule out the dark past which forced France, especially after the French Revolution, to make a strong wall between church and state. Also Jefferson in the United States, and also the great American constitutionists or thinkers who actually who had the far sight to see that a healthy modern democracy can only function if the state itself doesn't particularly favor any particular religion. Of course, UK is different. The Church of England had a stronger voice in the running of the state. That's a different subject. Now, coming to Vivekananda, as I mentioned, again I am repeating his definition of education and religion. Religion is a manifestation of divinity already in man, and education is a manifestation of perfection already in all of us. That's what it means. Now, if you define religion as a manifestation of divinity in all of us, then do we need really this wall between church and state? If you define church or religion as a doctrine, a rigid doctrinal or theological prison wall, then you will need certainly this separation. So that's why you find Jefferson and others, and also the leaders of the French Revolution, Rousseau, Robespierre and others, they were strongly against the stranglehold of the Catholic Church over French society. So they created this wall between the church and state. But if you look at religion as a manifestation of divinity in all of us, without the need of a particular missionary, in the form of a particular book that you are expected to follow, which if you don't follow, you'll be punished, or you'll be sent to hell, with some kind of a uncompromising dictator sitting above the skies, watching all of us, with a frown in his eyes, with a big stick in his hands, and a long list of do's and don'ts, and two keys, one key opening to the hell, other one opening to the heaven. I mean, dividing humanity into two groups, those who are heading towards heaven and hell. Then you will certainly need a separation, a wall of separation. But if you can look upon religion as spirituality, as Vivekananda defined, that is one of the revolutionary definitions of Vivekananda, the contributions of Vivekananda to religious thought. Religion is not rituals. Religion is not opposed to rituals. Religion is not following a single book. Religion is not opposed to books. Religion is a gradual evolution of our life, of our heart, of our emotions and feelings. We begin with rituals, okay. We begin with kindergarten in education. We don't end there. And then we move towards theology, mythology, philosophy, hermeneutics, interpreting scriptures, different tools of epistemology we may apply in interpreting the scriptures, perfectly okay. But religion doesn't end there. Religion still has a long way to go. Religion becomes spirituality only when religion becomes experience. That is the manifestation of divinity already in all of us. So in that sense, religion is pure humanism, spiritual humanism. And religion is universalism. So if you interpret religion as spirituality, then there is no need of First Amendment. That's what it implies. Because religion is spirituality. So you don't have the hangover of the French Revolution, Rousseau and Robespierre, fighting against the age-old stranglehold of Catholic Church in France, the society and education. And of course, when people came from Europe to this country in search of freedom and independence and a new way of life, they had these memories of what they had to go through in England, in France, in Holland, eventually before migrating here. So they had this in mind. That's why the great man, the great constitutional expert, one of the national founders of this country, he made a strong wall, a barrier between church and state, religion and nation. But if you take Swami Vivekananda's interpretation of religion as a spirituality, then religion can be a part of educational endeavor. That's what it means. So, one of the great statements that Swami Vivekananda made in his first Chicago address, Ye yathamam prabadyente tam saiva bhajamiham mama varma anuvartante manushyaha partha sarvasyaha. He may have quoted this. We have no source to confirm, but he made a almost literal translation of this verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Different people, different religious traditions, representing different ways of life, different outlook on life, following different paths, taking different roads, 101 or 102, whatever freeway you may call it, but they are all heading towards one single goal. That is, this manifestation of divinity in all of us. Church is wonderful, temple is wonderful, Bibles and Gitas and Vedas and Buddhist scriptures are all wonderful, but religion becomes spirituality when you go beyond rituals, beyond books, beyond theology, beyond mythology, beyond external practices, but when you reach experience. And when you reach experience, you manifest this divinity within all of us. Now, as I mentioned earlier, his revolutionary interpretation or definition of education as education manifestation of perfection already in man. While interpreting education, Vivekananda uses the word perfection. Perfection and divinity are the same. So you can find a wonderful, very, very mind-boggling identity or similarity between Vivekananda's definition of education and his definition of religion. Religion is spirituality, nothing less, nothing more. And spirituality is humanism. Spirituality is universalism. Spirituality is a way of looking at the entire humanity as one spiritual family. Now, if you can interpret religion in this language, then what happens is church and state can come together. Religious teachings can be integrated into education. Of course, one should not be fighting over creationism or evolutionism. That is quite funny and stupid. You can focus on some of the fundamental universal humanistic teachings of all religious traditions. You see, look at the personality of Christ and Buddha. Where do you draw the line? Or the great sages of ancient India, of whom Buddha was one according to Hindu tradition, one of the later manifestations. Where do you draw the line? They all lived almost alike, taught alike, preached alike, but born in different socio-economic, political, anthropological, cultural conditions and landscapes. So they spoke different languages, preached in different languages, used different parables and different analogies. So at the spiritual level, humanity is one. This is one central teaching of all religions. At least most of the great religions where they have a great role model to look for, like a Christ, inspiring humanity for the last 2,000 years, Buddha, 2,600 years, or Hindu sages like Patanjali Yoga Sutras. If you listen to Yoga Sutras, he's talking about spiritual universal humanism. He lived roughly around 900 BC, 300 years before Buddha, or the great sages of Vedic times. You cannot draw a line. Now, the point is, frequently the argument in favor of this permanent separation between church and state is this: a teacher cannot teach a particular religion and ask the students to endorse his views. Or rather, a teacher himself cannot encourage or endorse one particular religious teaching. That's perfectly okay. But teachers can focus on some universal humanistic elements of all religious traditions, not focusing on controversial elements. If you look at the great teachings of the great founders of religion, you find there are two types of teachings. One set of teachings were universal, meant for the whole humanity, for all times. Certain universal spiritual ideas, which no sane person can deny the importance of. Then there are some other teachings which are related to national, cultural, geographical, socio-anthropological limitations or conditions of which these prophets were a product. Prophets are products. Buddha was born in India. So Buddha's parables are more or less located in the northern part of India, where Buddha still uses many of the parables and analogies which actually can be found in two well-known Hindu books of mythology. whether Katha, Sarisagara and Panchatantra. Buddha takes all this. Also some stories from Mahabharata, Puranas you find in Buddha. Or look at Christ. He was a product of the long, age-old evolution of the Judeo-Hebraic, Jewish tradition. He was himself a great Jewish rabbi. But he was himself a spiritual revolutionary who turned a new chapter in the history of that Hebraic or the Semitic evolution of spirituality. Now, if you look at them as universal spiritual teachers, and if you focus on the universal humanistic ideas, if you go beyond the socio-economic anthropological conditionings or limitations of their teachings and their life and what they taught, you can find they all spoke the same language, they all spoke about the same fundamental spiritual ideas. So, in this sense, we can see there is a great scope for integrating religion and spirituality into the classroom. That's what I'm trying to discuss right now. And Vivekananda has many definitions. It's a man-making education all around that we need. The present system of education is all wrong. The mind is crammed with facts before it knows how to think. This, the later half of 19th century. It is as true today as it was during the time when Vivekananda spoke. Today, education has become even much more rigid. At least when Vivekananda spoke and lived, there was a lot of scope for integrating humanities, history, philosophy, mysticism, to some extent in the curriculum. But today, you should be smart, whatever that word could mean. It means you should be quick, fast, smart, and produce the expected result as quickly as possible, and then go to the next screen on the computer. Now what happens is, if a child is taught only to press a button and to look for short-term goals, and if his desired goals are only meant to make a few more extra dollars, to buy a better, bigger car, to build a bigger home, then what happens? A time comes when he either becomes a machine or he will be badly in need of a few pills for getting 4 hours sleep every day, every night. Because human mind requires many more things than mechanical skills. That is how human mind is designed. Even the most cutthroat bohemian, agnostic or atheist, God-denying antichrist of modern times will deny this fact. He has to accept that human mind needs something more than the joy that a machine provides. The joy and the happiness that a big bank balance can provide. That's very much understood today. So, Swami Vivekananda actually spoke about the importance of humanities in educational curriculum. And this was at a time when, at least in India, mechanical skills were positively discouraged by the British rulers. You know how Manchester became the most prosperous textile manufacturing town in England? Because the British managed to destroy India's own 2,500 years textile industry. If you read Shankaracharya's Stotra, Sanskrit devotional poetry, also if you read Kalidasa, who lived in 2nd century AD, Kalidasa speaks about the nice, wonderful, magnificent creations of saris, textiles by age-old Indian trade guilds. People used to work. Even now, Kanjipuram, Kashi, Benares silk. You can get Benares silk. Benares silk is talked about by Kalidasa in 2nd century AD, and Shankaracharya in 8th century AD in his devotional poetry, when he extols the Divine Mother or Divine Mother, Universal Mother. It's a poetic fancy. You are adorned in the beautiful Benares and Kanji silk, silk clothes. Shankaracharya writes. Such an ancient. Now, these are deliberately destroyed, frequently by cutting down the fingers of the textile manufacturers, by deliberately burning the fields where they were making cotton. Of course, I'm not going to that part of the history, but the point is, so what happened was, even at a time when the British educators were deliberately destroying all mechanical skills, mechanical expertise of Indians in the later half of the 19th century, Vivekananda says, and they were encouraging only humanities in Indian universities, the British educators. Vivekananda says we need humanities. Swami Vivekananda himself was a product of an education system where humanities, history and philosophy were given so much of importance. And Swamiji says we need mechanical skills also. But at the same time he says, for the human mind to get spiritually, culturally enriched, we need humanities. That is totally neglected in today's conditions. That's an important point. So history, humanities, mysticism, philosophy, literature, all these we require. All these are necessary for us to bring forth the perfection already within all of us. Swamiji says, learn everything that is good from others and bring it in, and in your own way observe it. Do not become others. That's an interesting thing. In education, we should remember, we should not try to become others. All of us have the individual skills within us. So the skill of a musician, the skill of a mystic, the skill of an artist, of a novelist, it is a manifestation, according to Vivekananda, of this divinity already within him or within her. A great painter, a great musician, great literary artist, when he paints a picture, when he composes a song, or when he writes a great novel, it is a manifestation of this perfection that is already within the person. The education that he received from schools and colleges, and the training he may have received from his parents, his upbringing, all these have contributed towards bringing out this manifestation, this manifested divinity of perfection that is already within that person. It doesn't come from outside. And Vivekananda says, again talking about education, he says, you are the creator of your own destiny. Educate our people so that they may be able to solve their own problems. Until that is done, all these ideal reforms will remain ideals only. He's talking about social reforms minus education. The very essence of education is concentration of the mind. He also talks about the evolution of the human mind. When you study something, you get information. When you become dedicated to your area of learning, you get knowledge. And when you dedicate yourself in one area, to one branch of learning, you become a scholar. The Vivekananda says that's not the end of education. Scholarship is not the end of education. After scholarship, there is something else you have to attain, is an intuition. He calls the word wisdom. In one of his lectures, he used the word capital letter W, wisdom. So what did he mean by the word wisdom? Intuition. The ability to handle and to manage and the skill to make proper use of what we learn, that is wisdom or intuition. That is the ultimate purpose of education. Now, this is very important, and you find here is the relevance of spiritual education, as I mentioned earlier. If you can define religion as spirituality, if you can define religion as spiritual humanism, if you can define religion as the ability to look up at the entire humanity as one spiritual family, and this spirituality should manifest in the form of kind of inner fulfillment within, and also as a kind of harmony, natural friendship, harmony, and understanding in our interaction with others. No conflict in our interactions with others, and no conflict within our own mind. This is possible only when you bring in spirituality. So this spirituality is not a monopoly of any particular religious tradition. It can be found in all religious traditions. It is not a monopoly of a particular church or a particular temple or a particular religious organization, actually. All religions do have this. Unfortunately, sometimes, when a religion becomes too much one-man oriented, and when you emphasize the literal interpretation of every single word, every comma, every full stop of one book, then there will be problems, and we are seeing all around right now the signs of those problems. The subject is beyond the scope of our conversation right now. But so long as we have a man like Buddha and Christ, or Sri Krishna, Sri Ramakrishna, look forward, who taught only what I now call a kind of spiritual humanism, which is also spiritual universal humanism, then that kind of religion will certainly enrich any educational process anywhere in the world. This is my end. Even I don't think the leaders of the French Revolution, who were responsible for hammering on the separation of church and state, especially European context in modern times, they would object to this idea of this universal spiritual humanism. Vivekananda says, we may read books, hear lectures, talk miles, but experience is the one teacher, the one eye-opener. It is best as it is. We learn through smiles and tears we learn. He says, life itself is a great teacher. And Vivekananda talks about experience. How do you interpret this to students in your classroom? Experience. The moment you talk about one book, one kind of rituals, immediately there will be problems. And there are being problems. But if you can talk about the experience that within your own heart, you feel great peace of mind. You feel a kind of inner serenity and fulfillment and happiness within. And you like to express this happiness in your interaction with others, in perfect harmony, broad-mindedness, and friendship. Then I don't think anyone will question that kind of interpretation of religion, experience. Swamiji says, you may read books, perform rituals, perform puja, confession, whatever it is, and then may read philosophy, you may read Augustine, Aquinas, Shankaracharya, and many others you may read and discuss. That's wonderful. That certainly enriches the human civilization. But at the same time, you should go beyond that. You should experience it. And how do we experience this? When we try to meditate, or when we try to bring the idea of the inner divinity into every word we speak, into our own life, into our kitchen, into our factory, into our classroom, into the hospital where the doctors are practicing medicine. Then what happens, you can bring God into your own private chamber, with the kitchen, dining hall, wherever it is. So, religion is not a performance of mechanical rituals. It is the art of bringing divinity into every sphere of our life. That's why Vivekananda, again, he says, all power is within you. You can do anything and everything. This may sound a bit too much of a bombastic, but no. So Swamiji says, when a person can feel that he has the divine potential within him, and he has the potential perfection within him, that belief, when he becomes sincere, will give him a tremendous self-confidence, will help him to work very hard and reach perfection in whatever undertaking that he chooses, either art, literature, sculpture, medicine, engineering, whatever it is. That's what Swamiji says. A university will help you. Books will help you. Library will help you. Research activities will help you only to bring out this perfection that has to manifest. Right now, it is there within us. It should come out. It should manifest. That's why he says religion is the manifestation of divinity already in all of us, and education the manifestation of perfection already in all of us. Swamiji used the word man. Religion is the manifestation of divinity already in man, and education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. You know, this is 19th century English, so man means entire humanity. That's what you should understand. So the point is, now I don't want to compare, but what I would say, I mean, you know, educational philosophy, educational psychology are being benefited greatly from the works of Herbert or Froebel or John Dewey or Montessori and many Pestalozzi and so on. You know, all the great Western educational philosophers, educational thinkers have made a great contribution to us making education liberal as we find today. But then there is something else that can be added to it. Not instead of it, but can be added to it. That is this universal spiritual humanism. Interpreting religion and education both as the manifestation of the inner divinity, the divine, the inner potential perfection that is there within all of us. That's what Swami Vivekananda said about education. Now, in this educational system, as I mentioned, according to Vivekananda, history plays an important role. That is something very interesting for us to remember. History plays a very important role. Swamiji once quoted Kalhana. Kalhana was an ancient historian who lived in Kashmir. His Raja Tarangini, that's the name of his book in Sanskrit. Supposed to be one of the earliest proper work on historiography in Sanskrit language. Now, in that book, he defines the role of a historian. A historian should be impartial. He should not be judgmental. He should be even-minded. All these descriptions are given in Raja Tarangini. And Vivekananda says a proper understanding of the history of human civilization is important to make any education system useful and helpful in bringing out this inner perfection that is already within us. Because history doesn't disappear. History may not repeat itself. But our failure to learn lessons from history will have the potential danger and risk of history repeating itself in different forms. And that may not be always a pleasant experience for humanity. So that's why Vivekananda, he mentions history of human civilization as an important part, as an important element in the curriculum for education. He doesn't specifically divide education for children and education for grown-up people. He doesn't classify education for at the university level or education at the pre-university level. What he talks about is making education an all-round process that helps us to manifest our own inner potential. And this manifestation should take place in such a way that we should be able to look upon life as a single whole, not in parts. And again, Vivekananda was a great admirer of the Western emphasis on teamwork, efficiency, organization skill, especially when Vivekananda traveled all over America. He was highly interested by the organization's genius of the people. You know, you can just imagine less than, let's say, 400 million people, maybe just above 300 million. And, they've spread all over this country, this continent, which is perhaps more than 3 times as big as India, and less than 1/3 of India's population, and which have become uniformly educated, developed. In this way, Swamiji was a great admirer. And this, of course, came at a cost. Some sociologists make an interesting comment. And what they say is, American family system has become so loose. I mean, the kinship, the sense of sanctity and sacredness between family members have been lost for a long time. And perhaps that is the only reason why America could develop so fast. So you can think of the mid-19th century, large number of people migrating towards the west, and Oregon Trail. They come into St. Louis, and you find a number of wagons come to St. Louis, and all of them get down there, and new passengers will enter these wagons, and they will continue the journey towards the west coast. And these youngsters who are starting the journey from St. Louis towards Portland and other places, they will never see their home again. They will never see their parents and grandparents again. No, the connection lost once for all. So this helped America to expand and develop. But it also resulted in something that is very unpleasant and unhappy, the collapse of the family system. Now, Swami Vivekananda says, he talks about the need for synthesizing and harmonizing the best of the traditional and the best of the modern, and to be more specific, the best of the Occidental with the best of the Oriental. He refers to an interesting congregational address that is mentioned in the Krishna Yajurveda, in the Taittiriya Upanishad. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a convocation address, historically perhaps the first convocation address that we have access to, because Krishna Yajurveda belongs to 3rd millennium BC. And Taittiriya Upanishad says, Vedamanuchya acharya handevasina manishasti satyam vada dharmam chara satya na pramudidavyam dharma na pramudidavyam madhudevo bhava pidudevo bhava acharya devo bhava adidhidevo bhava yani anavadyani karmani tani sevitavyani no idarani yani asmagam sujaridani tani sevitavyani no idarani. This is one paragraph from Krishna Yajurveda, Taittiriya Upanishad. He says, after studying the Vedas, these students are returning home to marry, to play different roles as husbands and wives, mothers and parents, sisters and brothers, and so on. So when they leave, when they depart from the Vedic school, the professor addresses them. There are many advices given. You should stick to the truth. No, satya na pramadidavyam. You should not deviate from the path of satyam, truth. Dharma na pramadidavyam. You should not deviate from the path of virtuous dharma. And then another thing, the next part, madhudevo bhava, pidudevo bhava, acharya devo bhava, adidhi devo bhava. Let your parents, your teacher, and the guests who visit your home, let them be respected and honored as much as God is honored and respected. Literal translation. And then the subsequent paragraphs talk about the need for self-reliance. So, Kushalana Pramadidavyam means Kushala means Atmarakshanarthar, Karmanaha na Pramadidavyam. Shankaracharya's interpretation, his commentary means one should never deviate from doing what is absolutely necessary, what is absolutely needed for the preservation of family, village, country, society, and so on. So you can imagine, along with certain other values, the sanctity and sacredness of the institution of family are mentioned and emphasized. And also there are many long passages glorifying the institution of marriage without serfdom, without slavery of the feminine, remember, not at all. Equal place should be given to women as much as men. And remember, some of the great philosophers of Yajurveda tradition, Shukla Yajurveda tradition in the Brihadaranyupanishad, they were ladies. You can find any number of women philosophers. This is long before Socrates was born, long before Plato and Aristotle were born. Certainly, obviously, long before Augustine Aquinas. So, women philosophers coming to King's Court and arguing something arrogant language, the greatest philosophers of their times, and challenging them. You can find all this in the Yajurveda tradition, the Shukla Yajurveda, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So Vivekananda says, men and women both, should be given education, should be honored, but something that he emphasizes is very relevant for modern times, the sanctity and the sacredness of the institution of marriage and the institution of family. Now, these things are never mentioned or taught in any education institution in modern times, because it is considered to be an intrusion into family affairs. Perhaps we need not discuss the subject verbally, so obviously, but certainly some of the great teachings can be taught as a part of the teaching of sociology or history or culture. The sanctity and sacredness of the institution of family, the sanctity and sacredness of the institution of marriage, the respect and the honor that children should give to their parents, and the affection that the parents should give to their children. Of course, in modern times, if you go to India, you find there was a time till 30, 40 years ago, you need grandparents' permission before choosing whether you should join engineering and medicine. This 40 years ago. Now you travel 180 degrees, nothing happens. Now everyone is independent, more or less, except in some villages. So, of course, there is always the problem of the hierarchy, the tyranny of seniority, the tyranny of the elder. That problem is there. But still, we have entered a new phase in modern civilization. So, some of these great ideas can be brought back, can be used for enriching the present education system. The ancient values need not be applied verbally, literally in today's context. But some of the great values do have a place, relevance, importance, and sometimes they are very much needed even for the very survival of modern society. Some of these values should be brought back. So Vivekananda says, he emphasizes again and again, so many times he emphasizes the need to harmonize, to synthesize the best of the Western with the best of the Eastern, with the best of the modern scientific and technological civilization, with the best of the ancient values, ancient heritage. And especially he emphasizes the role of history, study of history, to enrich, to make the present education more complete, because that will help us to bring out the inner potential. Either could be perfection in education or divinity in religion, whatever may be. Study of history plays a very important role. So again, what I wanted to say was, if you can interpret education as the manifestation of perfection already in all of us, and if you can interpret religion as the manifestation of divinity in all of us, in other words, religion is spirituality, nothing less, nothing more, then I think the prison walls of separation between church and state can be disposed of. Anyway, this is only a suggestion. Unfortunately, today we won't have a Q&A. I'm sure it will be very exciting, but we have another very important program just after this lecture, so there will be no question and answer session. But remember, we have a very interesting and very exciting program every Sunday, 6 p.m. For the last several months, we've been giving a series of lectures interpreting the fundamental texts of Indian philosophy, sponsored by the Stanford Students Association. Globally, it is live streamed, YouTube, and of course there is a Zoom session. You can connect with me through Zoom, and every Sunday, 6 p.m., you can get the Zoom link from our website. And it's very important for us to remember, because after this there will be no Sunday lectures. I will make an announcement slowly about the summer recess and the suspension of the Sunday lectures for the next almost 2 months. Thank you. Namaskar. Now we will have some announcements. Please remember, this has been the last lecture of this season. And we have summer recess beginning tomorrow. So we'll be on summer recess beginning tomorrow, Monday, June 27th, through Saturday, September 10th. So there will be no Sunday lecture here during the summer recess, which begins tomorrow, Monday 27th, till through Saturday, September the 10th. Lectures will resume on September 11th. That is Sunday, September 11th. And a Friday evening class in the Old Temple will resume on September 16th. It's all in-person events. In the interim, we will continue to have Wednesday evening Vesper service at the temple. So some of you who can come here, please attend our Wednesday evening Vesper service at the temple, 7:30 p.m. every Wednesday in this temple. There will also be some special programs to which you are all invited. This is very important. On Saturday, July 16th at 10 a.m., we will celebrate Guru Purnima. This is an important celebration in the Vedanta tradition. Saturday, July 16th at 10 a.m. The day is devoted to honoring the spiritual teacher. The program will include worship and meditation, as well as a talk on the subject, the Ramakrishna Mission 125th anniversary by Swami Tattwamayananda, the minister in charge of the Vedanta Society of St. Louis. This talk is a part of our celebration of the 125th anniversary of the foundation of the Ramakrishna Mission. So remember, this year we are celebrating 125th anniversary of the Ramakrishna Mission, of which Vedanta Society is a branch, and we will have a special lecture on this topic, the Ramakrishna Mission 125th anniversary by Swami Tattwamayananda ji. He is the minister in charge of the Vedanta Society of St. Louis. Swamiji will give a talk on this. Please remember, July 16th, Saturday, 10 a.m. in the morning, we'll start the puja. After puja, there will be this talk by Swami Tattwamayananda. You're also invited to attend the Labor Day. This is also an important program. Every year we have this Labor Day retreat. So this year, the Labor Day retreat will be from Saturday, September 3rd, through Monday, September the 5th. The retreat topic will be the role of spiritual values in modern education. More information will be in the September bulletin. So you can also discuss any of these ideas that we just referred to, not clarified because of want of time, in this Labor Day retreat, because there will be 1 hour lecture and half an hour interaction after the lecture. So remember the dates, that is, it will be from Saturday, September the 3rd through Monday, September the 5th. So Saturday, Sunday and Monday. There will be 1 hour lecture at from 10 a.m. onwards. There will be half an hour interaction. During the summer, the temple will remain open from 8 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. for those who wish to meditate. So you can come here and meditate anytime between 8 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. The bookshop and library will remain closed. However, bookshop orders can continue to be placed online. So you can always use online for buying books from us. You can go to the website svedanta.org or just Google Vedanta Society, Northern California, San Francisco. Your cooperation is in being fully vaccinated wearing a mask and maintaining 6 feet of distance is greatly appreciated. If you would like to make an offering, a collection plate will be available on the cart at the door as you exit. There is also a mounted offering box near the auditorium door in the foyer. Hopefully, we'll be able to go back to the previous routine after the reopening, after the summer recess. So there'll be no question and answer session today because we have an important program just after this. We wish you all a healthy and happy summer, and we look forward to seeing you at your special programs. Please remember, every Sunday, 6 p.m. in the evening, we have an online program, a lecture, the foundational text of Indian philosophy. We will discuss different cultural, philosophical ideas. There will be a question and answer session. You can attend the Zoom link. You can get the Zoom link from our website, svedanta.org. And so that program will continue throughout, uninterrupted during the summer recess. So you can discuss any of these ideas that I just referred to, that I discussed in the lecture, even during the interaction in Zoom at 6 p.m. every Sunday in the evening. It will be an online program. So please remember Guru Purnima, Saturday, July 16, 10 a.m. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.